Welcome to BWI Live. I'm Thomas Frank Carr. It's White Out week, so we are talking about the game and the list. That's it. That's what's coming up on the show today, and the guys that are going to be doing that. By the way, music playing? Can't even tell. I'm trying to get you as many cool things to look at today. We've got the White Out list, we got intros, we got highlights, and, I am pushing the system to the max, as always. So, Fitz, how are things going on your end? Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Rainy. The music, by the way, is still on from what I hear.
Okay. I hear nothing.
Yeah, you're doing great. It's a great start. We want to start fast here. It's good. It's raining like a lot here, which I think that, we'll talk weather. And I think it's usually like the thing we spend the most time about, or the most time talking about that, is out of control for everyone. So we don't have to worry about that. But a lot of rain in Happy Valley this week. Hopefully clears up by Saturday because everybody likes to tailgate, right? Everybody likes to go outside. Everybody likes to be around people and not huddled under a tent. I'm looking forward to that myself. So join us Saturday in the lots. It'll be fun.
So I am weather app agnostic. I do not care. I just put weather, State College into my browser, and then I look at it. And every single time that happens, my wife goes, ugh, are you using that weather app? And then it's like, there is always a weather snob in your life. Ryan, I got the vibe from you this morning that you might be a weather snob. You gave me a very specific app to go to with the forecast. So you sound like you know more than me. So let's have the conversation.
I mean, I don't know if I know more than you. I don't think anybody knows except the weather guys. But how much did it rain up there yesterday? I thought, it looked fine on Saturday from what I saw. It'll be showers in the area, but as far as messing up tailgates,
it has not stopped raining since last night when we were at practice. It's rained all night. It's rained all morning.
Hard rain though, that's going to screw up the lots.
So that's what I'm wondering.
Because it's going to be sunny tomorrow. It'll dry it out.
Yeah, and
then just showers on Saturday. I don't know.
We went.
It's a whiteout game. Get out.
Not a weather podcast. Here we are.
Who cares?
We went probably a month and a half without rain, and then it's rained all week. And so I think on the balance, the lots will be fine. I just know I've been in that experience where it's like you see the Chevy Tahoe that is like 3 inches into the mud, and everyone's like pushing each other to get out. I don't know if that's going to happen this weekend. I just know that it's been raining a lot lately. But as Ryan pointed out, no weather this weekend, so that'll be exciting. So I lied.
We're still in a drought. It'll be all right.
As Ryan promised, okay. Yes.
Yeah,
that's the theme of the day.
Can't wait to pull it in and see this Tahoe stuck in the mud on Saturday. That looked dumb.
That is one of the things we're talking about with the whiteout. But Ryan, you had a chance to talk to Andy Frank, personnel director, de facto GM, I don't know his exact title, for Penn State
General
football.
Manager of personnel and recruitment. Sorry to cut you off. Go ahead.
All good. I like the specificity here on the show. How did that conversation go, and how did you get 5 minutes with a guy who's got 140 plus recruits coming to campus this weekend? What was the general vibe of the conversation with Andy?
Yeah, big thanks to Andy for giving some time this weekend. This week. I appreciate it. He is busy. They are all busy, right? But I think really just kind of this is going to be the biggest list ever, right? We've talked about this, I think, since last week. James Franklin talked about 250 recruits. I don't think it's going to get that high, but 200 or so is absolutely realistic. Right now, I'm at 154, and I think we could probably get that up to 160 or so, maybe even 170 or so by Saturday, and that's kind of what we're looking at here as far as the whiteout list goes. Andy says there could be upwards of 200. So just kind of was catching up with him the other day as far as how do you make this possible? Because for years, 150, I think the biggest was 163 from what I understand, or at least from asking around. So how do you fit another 40 or so players in there, especially during a stadium renovation, right? That doesn't make a whole lot of sense, especially on such a coveted ticket. And the short answer is that the administration, athletic department, basically understands the importance of this game. And for the most part, Penn State has always had 2 sections for recruits. I think anyone who's down there on the lower level on the east side is seen. I think it's EF, EEF. I'm not exactly sure which ones, but right there behind the bench, 50-yard line or so, they got premium seats. For bigger games, they've kind of opened up other areas or found other areas to put recruits. But that third section, I don't know if you really even call it a section. They've been a little more scattered is kind of the point over the last couple of years, which is limited how much they could hold because you only have so many recruiting interns. You only have so much personnel. You don't want, 20 families scattered all over the stadium and then trying to get people together and all those things after the game. Long story short, they kind of have 3 real true sections for this. And that's kind of how or why we're seeing them able to host more than normal. Again,
I was under the impression they just stood on the sideline the whole time. I didn't realize you got seats and stuff.
No, yeah, definitely not. They have awesome seats, pretty much the best seats you could ask for. Seats that will cost a lot of money on the West End next to But so I just kind of was asking those details and trying to get specifics on different things. Really, the answers as far as how this list came together, why it's so deep with 4-star talent is kind of what I expected to hear. One, their recruiting staff and their overall staff is as big as it's ever been. I believe the recruiting staff is 15 people now. And I think maybe even the bigger thing is that, of course, the assistant coaches' numbers have stayed the same, but now there is an assistant under every coach, right?
Yeah.
GAs have kind of gone away, but every single position has an assistant as well. So it's just an overall numbers thing. When you have more people able to work on recruiting, you're able to, chip away at guys in Texas and California or whatever it may be. So I think that's kind of the big takeaway from it as far as how that came apart or how that came about. At the same time, this is a massive game. Oregon is a big brand name. Penn State is coming off a semifinal run. And by the way, Penn State's a pretty big brand name too. And the White Out is as big as it gets as far as spectacles in college football. So add that all together. And that's kind of what we're seeing here right now. Just for some background info on the list, I have 51 4-star players in the 2027 class. So a quarter of the list are 4-star prospects. That doesn't include the commits either. So if you actually add in that, it's a little bit higher up in the 50s. And then there's also a dozen top 100 2028 prospects. There are 15 top 100 2027 prospects. And then when you add in some of the 2028s who don't have a true 4-star rating yet because we expand the rankings as they go, it's really, I would say, probably about 20 or so 2028 4-stars in the end. Guys that are on pace to be 4-stars, but don't really have that rating right now, but have an 89 rating in our system, right? And you start with a high 3-star with those guys and usually bump them up, as things go. So in my eyes, man, you're looking at 75-ish potential 4-star players there. Wow, that's pretty good.
Yeah, not too bad. If you want to go to the game, we've been talking about the ways you get the tickets all week long with Game Time and all of that stuff. But how do you afford the tickets to this game? Now, that's the real question. And I have a potential solution if it works out for you. And that's Andy Ludicky at My Perfect Franchise. He is a franchise consultant that helps you understand business and what you're going to be buying into if you want to change your life. Maybe you want to leave the corporate rat race for the American dream. Maybe you're looking for a way to build a side hustle. Maybe you want to be able to afford tickets to the White Out. Maybe you want to leave a legacy to you, to your family, and your generations beyond that. There's a hard reality that money is at the center of all of those things. And if you've got the skills, the knowledge, the technical knowledge, and need some guidance on the business side, Andy has bought a bunch of franchises. He sold a bunch of franchises. He understands how this all works. He also can help you buy individual businesses, small businesses in your area as well. There's too much stuff to talk about, get into here. That's why you should go talk to Andy. Andy at myperfectfranchise.net. And this is the thing that I've learned. If there's one thing I have learned, there's no such thing as a bear market or a bull market. The American economy is a badger market. Like, it's just going to keep going and going and going. And even if it isn't always going up, it's going somewhere. So if this is your opportunity in your life to make a change, Andy at myperfectfranchise.net, 404-973-9901. You can also check him out on the Blue White Illustrated message board. He's there to talk to you. You can have a personal conversation with him about football, recruiting, business. He's a Texas fan, so you can make fun of him about the way Arch Manning has started the season, any of that stuff. Once again, Andy at myperfectfranchise.net. Also want to tell you that if you want to come to the game and maybe you don't have a place to stay, maybe this is just for some of our more bougie people in the audience, but maybe you want to just buy a house here in State College. That is a thing people do. I was in college, and one of my friend's dads just bought a house for him to live in after his freshman season. Ann Lusk and Associates are experts in transactions and purchasing of a home, maybe the sale of a home. It's a major milestone. It's a life milestone, or a life stone, as I just said. It's one that deserves guidance and experience from professionals. If you see a for sale by owner sign in the front yard, run the other way. Lusk Associates Sotheby International Realty is known for delivering world-class service backed by a trusted name and commitment to excellence, and is a Penn State superfan and a proud supporter of everything blue and white. So, their knowledge, detail-oriented agents, and she has built a reputation in Pennsylvania, especially in the York and Harrisburg area, down with Ryan, as one of the best real estate agents, not just in Pennsylvania, but in America. So, if you want to be in good hands, 814-808-7588. That's the number to call. I'll put it up here on the screen again. 814-808-7588 or luskandassociates.com. You can also just put into your Google machine and Lusk Realty, and it'll come up as well, because that's how I found it a bunch of times when I was trying to find the site to look at houses, because I'm obsessed with looking on the inside. I'm very nosy looking at what other people's houses look like. Lusk and Associates Sotheby International Realty, where experience meets excellence. And it is the White Out game, by the way. So there is a big opportunity for you to go to the game, have a great time, and be there for one of the most historic games possibly in the last 10 years. This fall, nothing goes better with college football than an ice cold Labatt Blue or Labatt Blue Light, because when you bleed blue and white, drink blue and light. You can check out the post-game show, and Labatt Blue Light is the sponsor of that, coming up in the dead of night when you're still wired from the game. Now, Labatt is born in Canada but brewed in the USA. Labatt has been a game day tradition for fans who know how to celebrate each first down and every touchdown. And here's the best part. When you stock up on Labatt, you can score big off the field, too. Just visit rewards.labattusa.com to get rewarded with the Buy Beer, Get Gear program. So whether you're tailgating with 107,000 fans, watching at home here with the 409 on the YouTube channel, crack a Labatt Blue White or Labatt Blue Light and make every Saturday a win. Please drink responsibly. Labatt USA, Buffalo, New York. So, Ryan, here's the list over at BlueWhiteIllustrated.com. It's insane. There's just so many players on this list. We're not going to be going through every single name here on the show, because we'd be here until the game starts. You've done a great job of breaking things out into a couple of different lists. So we're going to get to that here in a second. But Fitz, I have yet to get your impression of the whiteout list and your thoughts on the game so far this weekend. Where are you in terms of like what you're thinking about big picture with recruiting this weekend?
It's going to be interesting to watch. Somebody earlier in the chat asked about, I thought too many recruits was a bad thing for this. I think you're probably thinking back to Ohio State last year, the noon kick. It's almost counterproductive at that point to have that many guys in for an early kick, because they're not going to feel the love. They're not going to feel the attention that they feel, hey, we came to State College, you should pay attention to us, even though there was a top 5 matchup or top 10 matchup or whatever it was at this point last year. So, but when you have a game at night, when you have a game that is actually branded the whiteout at night, and I know Washington last year, a little bit different, because that was late in the season, November. It's going to get into high school playoffs and things like that. I think this is kind of the perfect storm. You think back to when they played Illinois I don't remember what year that was, but I mean, that was that, but like that late September window where it was so wonderful, and so everybody's so happy because it's sunny out and everybody's having a good time. That is ideal. And you think back 2 or 3 years after that, and a lot of the guys that came from the roster, and it's still the case with Penn State's current roster, were at that game. So you want to get it earlier in the season, and if you can do it, just load up. And I think that's what they've done. They've started building this list months out. I guess that the Andy Frank interview is really good. You should go read it. But you start building this list months out, and you find yourself with some of the top players from the country that probably aren't going to come to Penn State, but still, like, this is an attraction. This is a spectacle, and people want to see it. And maybe you do flip 1 or 2 of those guys that wasn't really considering Penn State to begin with, and then all of a sudden, hey, this is pretty cool. I could get into this. So that's what you're looking at from that aspect of it. But again, it's also about sort of placating the region, getting all the top guys that you possibly can that have been to campus before and just sort of cherry on top it, just kind of go to the next level, because this is an atmosphere that is very, very hard to duplicate in college football. And I know there's so many more factors at play here with NIL, with the money aspect of it, but there's still a lot of guys when you build, 50% of your class that are going to build it off of the same things that you always built you always built those decisions off of. So this is going to be absolutely massive. They're going to get more time. The recruiting staff is going to be dead on their feet by 7:30 by the time the game starts. Maybe they get one of those seats that Ryan's talked about in the extra section, but it's really cool to see. And again, I've been covering recruiting since 2006. Is the best list I've ever seen, hands down. I think. I don't even think it's a conversation.
It's not.
So to that point, as you mentioned, there's 100 and however many, just a lot. There's so many prospects. Not all of them can even commit to Penn State. And some of them maybe are here to see a show. Maybe they're interested. Maybe their curiosity's piqued, and maybe they're like some of the Penn State prospects who wanted to go see some of the big games across the country, and they're just looking for a ticket. Well, let's get into that. Contenders and pretenders here on the White Out list. Again, we're not going to be able to go through every single name, but Ryan has put together some really great ways to look at it as far as which players that should you get excited about, which players should you be like, cool, who knows, but maybe not. So Ryan, take us through some of your contenders and pretenders that are going to be arriving on Saturday afternoon.
Yeah, there's a lot of ways to break down this list. We'll keep doing it here tomorrow or today and tomorrow. But I've been trying to find ways to talk about, guys were either overlooked. We'll talk about that in a second. Guys that, I think Penn State has a real chance with outside of the in-state guys we've been talking about, right? I think most of you guys know Penn State should be in the mix with Maxwell Hiller throughout most of his recruitment. Not saying they're absolutely going to get him, but I'd be surprised if they're not top 3 or so. Obviously they're in a good spot with Matthew Gregory, another in-state guy, Abraham Sesse, another in-state guy. So I was trying to find ways of saying, okay, I think you guys know for the most part some of those regional guys, or at least in-state guys, and where Penn State stands. But there's others throughout the region that I think we got to be talking about. And one of those is Ryan Jackson, defensive end, Annapolis, Maryland. Right now, we have him ranked number 127 in the Rivals 300, 16th at edge rusher. A little bit lower in the industry ranking, but still a 4-star player at 224, number 24 at the position. We have him at 6'4", 215. I think he's a little bit above that number at the moment, but a good-looking edge rushing prospect who, in a lot of ways, is still kind of raw, similar to Chaz Coleman. I don't know if he has the true athletic traits of a Chaz Coleman. I don't want to go that far yet, but there are some similarities between this two. And, the main thing that I think to know about Ryan Jackson is, one, he was just here for the Villanova game, which caught my attention because I thought for a while that Penn State was in a decent spot there, but he's a quiet recruit. The fact that he just was here 2 weeks ago and now is coming back stands out. But that's really just the start of it. On top of that, we caught up with him after that Villanova game. 2 big takeaways. One, he already kind of has a top 5 in his mind for the most part. Notre Dame, Tennessee, Maryland. I'm missing one other. Maybe it was South Carolina, I believe. But the other thing is that he wants to get this decision over with, I think, sooner than later. He said there's a potential chance that he does end it before his season. We'll see. I think a lot of guys kind of talk that way and then kind of think about it a bit differently as you get closer to that point. So I don't want to pretend that it's a absolute or anything like that, but this is a player that I do believe Penn State's trending with right now. Quality 4-star edge rusher. Obviously, Penn State has done an excellent job at that position, and I think this is a guy that they're trending with. So I had him down as a true contender, and honestly, I think Penn State's probably the favorite at the moment.
That's one that I think Penn State fans are happy to hear about. I know you aren't equating him directly to Chaz Coleman, but anytime you can bring up Chaz Coleman, not a
similar
bad
size.
Thing. Yeah,
they're raw in a lot of ways, but there's I don't have athletic numbers for Ryan Jackson, so that's why I don't want to go too far down that road. But there are similarities between them.
So a major contender there. Give us somebody that you think is maybe a pretender. Somebody that fans should you like, hey, great there on the list. Pump the brakes.
Yeah, I would go with Xavier Sabb. 5-star prospect out of Glassboro, right? I know, bummer. You don't ever want to hear pretender when it comes to 5-star players that are, pretty close, right? South Jersey. But to me, there's a couple things. One, Sab has really spoken highly of Alabama a lot, Ohio State a lot. Oregon's another one. 2, his brother Keon was I forget which year. I want to say maybe 2022 recruit. I want to say, went through this process before, and that was a recruitment where Penn State got him for an official visit. But in my eyes, they were always kind of outside looking in a little bit. When you talk about top 2, top 3 kind of situation, right? He committed to Clemson originally, then went to Michigan. Now he's at Alabama. I think the family has a lot of interest in Penn State. Don't get me wrong, but I also feel like the family has made it clear, especially with all their visits to schools all over the country, that they are open to whatever. The other thing is he has an older, so Xavier's a 2027 recruit. He has an older brother, Amari. He's a 2026 recruit. Not nearly as highly talented. He's a 3-star prospect, quality player. But, when you look at Penn State's class right now, I don't see them adding an Amari Sab to that 2026 class. And while I don't think they're a true package deal or anything like that, I don't want to get too far ahead of myself. That certainly has been discussed with some schools. So I just 1 + 1 + 1, like there's a few things there that kind of make me think, is Penn State really going to be in the mix here? Time will tell. I wouldn't be shocked at all if Penn State gets an official visit down the road, all those kind of things. But just from, getting to know the family previously and what they're looking for, I just don't know. It's not a perfect match for Penn State. Where a lot of other guys in the region, it makes more sense. This one, they feel like they're open to SEC. They're open to going to Oregon. They're open to wherever it may be. And, let's also be blunt. If he stays as a 5-star prospect, there could be a bidding war there at the end.
Yeah.
And, we've
13
seen
overall. 13 overall, there's a price tag with that in the On3 consensus rankings.
For sure. Yeah. So that's one where Penn State will be there. I think they'll be in the mix a little bit, but I don't know. If I was making a pick today, I'd certainly take the field.
Fitz, do you have any on your list? You don't have to go off Ryan's list. Any that you are looking at? You're like, either way, either your choice of contender or pretender here.
Now I have to look up the text trend that I had with Ryan yesterday because there's a couple guys in there that make a ton of sense. I mean, I think this was more focused on 2027, but you look at 2026, and I think it's fascinating with Carter Gooden coming in, the UCLA commit. Is he still committed to UCLA?
Technically, I think, yeah.
Technically still committed to UCLA, but Penn State was on him beforehand, and UCLA put together a pretty good package for him to come out. And obviously that one has fallen apart completely. That coaching staff was fired, and now all of a sudden that you look back at this and you think, is there a more traditional recruitment brewing? Because I think USC. It's force of habit saying USC, but UCLA kind of blew everyone out of the water, and everyone else is kind of like, I'm not sure that that's the direction that we want to go in, and Penn State included, from a money aspect. And now all of a sudden that's off the table. What happens? Does he go back to a traditional recruitment? Does he go back to taking more visits? He's going to come to Penn State this weekend, but also Penn State's got 5 defensive linemen committed. They don't need to overextend themselves. I feel, you look at Gooden, and he's highly rated. I think his 24/7, he's in the top 100, but I think that's a bit too high. But he's a talented guy, an athletic guy that can play on the edge. I still think he's eventually an interior guy, but he's athletic enough to make it a conversation at least. So, the Amin Vanover, stuck on the edge, and you've had guys that were projected to be interior guys that are sticking or going to stick on the edge as well. So I think that's a very fascinating one. And it's like, if you're Penn State, do you push all out this weekend, or do you wait to see how this plays out? Like I said, taking Tavion Branch means that you feel fine with where you stand right now. And I'm not seeing Gooden as a twitched up, one of those twitched up pass rushers that you kind of overextend yourself for in a situation like last year with Chaz, or
Is he a twitched up pass rusher at defensive tackle? And I know that's the conversation, but
possibly.
That's why
I think if he buys into it, possibly. Yeah. I mean, and I think that was the conversation to begin with, right? Penn State wanted him as a defensive tackle, and he said, I want to play end. To the point, he went to UCLA, and his visit list was all over the map, especially for, a guy that's in top 100 at somewhere else that, Michigan State, Virginia, Boston College, wonderful schools, obviously. And he's Canadian, by the way. So there's, this is a boarding situation in New England, but Penn State kind of stuck out like a sore thumb to begin with all those schools. And then all of a sudden, things kind of reset coming out of that. So I'm fascinated to see how this one's going to play out, because, on one hand, he's one of the better players left on Penn State's board. But on the other hand, I mean, it's not a situation where they're desperate for that body.
Yeah. Let's move on then to It's all right. Things can mean more than one thing, and they can also mean just the thing you meant them to be. Ryan, let's shift over to overlooked prospects. I think this is a good one for us to get into here because there are so many players, and everyone's going to go right to the top of the list and look at the Xavier Sabs, look at the fact that Emmanuel Iheanacho is going to be at this game, whether or not that matters for Penn State, right? Like everyone's going to be like, oh, they're definitely going to flip him. What do you think about the guys that we should know that you have your eye on that are maybe in the list and people are overlooking?
Yeah, go with this was just kind of looking at guys unranked 3-star guys. I did include 1 4-star in there in Carter Bonner, and that was mainly just because I just feel like we talk about the other in-state guys way more than Carter, and he's also only visited once since April 2024. He's about to be back this weekend. He visited this past April, and that's it since literally well over a year ago. So 1 visit in what is the last 15 or 17 months, I believe it is, which is interesting. But put him to the side for a second. I mean, I thought Xavier Bala, a running back prospect out of Baldwin, New York, St. Anthony's High School, is a good player for this list. Right now, remains unranked. Penn State offered him, I want to say, was it about a month ago? Maybe it was in September. It was either late August or September. And the more I learn on Bala, the more I think that, if they didn't have Keemon Spell committed, if Isaiah Rogers doesn't camp at Penn State and really flashes there, like this probably would have been a player that they would have offered sooner. He's put up some incredibly impressive, explosive numbers. His 40 times, I think that's the only real question right now. Is he a 4.6, 4.7 kind of guy, which doesn't have that blazing speed, and I think that's kind of maybe kept him from blowing up. But at the same time, he did 2 camps this summer. Went to Alabama, went to Ohio State. He left both of those schools with offers, right? So that's telling you something. He's doing something pretty impressive at 2 elite programs to pick up offers from both. And obviously those offers are, contingent on, how his junior season goes and those things like that. But explosive wise and shuttle wise and some of those numbers really kind of stand out. And, I wrote about that in the article the other day. So I think Ball is certainly a guy to watch. One thing I will say too, Teague Frank, is that like when we were doing that Contenders Pretenders article, Isaiah Rogers was one of the guys that I mentioned in there, and I mentioned him as a contender. Sean and I were going back and forth on this the other day. Is like, if Isaiah Rogers wants to commit in the next month, I think it's going to be hard for Penn State to say no. I think, Sean, you would agree with that. But also at the same time, like, are you pushing for another commit at the moment, with Keemon and especially during the season where schools are going to try to entice him to keep visiting? We'll see if he does or doesn't.
Is there that understanding with Keemon and, how it all works that he's fine with that? I think has been what you guys have outlined.
I think so. I think there was a time where I don't know that he fully expected a second running back in this class. And look, even at that time, you got to remember he committed in July 2024. Like Penn State was interested in adding a second running back for 2026, and just, the way it all played out, that didn't really happen. But they have to get a second running back in 2027. If Messiah is truly the only running back they sign in this class, then they're going to need another running back for next year's class. So I think Keemon knows that. Isaiah Rogers is obviously a very talented player, and I think Xavier Bala is a guy that we need to have on the radar because he's put up some pretty good numbers so far, and looks to be off to a pretty good start for his junior season.
Yeah, Fitz, how picky and selective and how much can they kind of slow play this, knowing they have Keemon Spell in the class, and that's pretty good. Like, how picky can they be in this running back recruitment?
Oh, I think they can absolutely be very, as picky as they want to be. And I think that the board is a little bit different than a Snyder board because Snyder was more, Florida focused, down south focused, a little more national, if that makes sense. But I think that you can also find really, really good running backs, as Penn State has proven over decades. You can find them in this region too. So very curious to see how that plays out. And I think Bala is a guy that's on the ascent. When you take a look at these guys that are getting offered as freshmen versus getting offered as juniors, we talked about that on the show last week. It's different, and these guys are still excelling and doing some really good things on the field. So I think that they can afford to be aggressive. And I think there's probably like a line here for Keemon Spell for most 2027 running back for all running backs, right? They all want to be the guy. They all want to be the one guy. And you have to convince them, and this is not just a Penn State thing, this is everybody, that you have to at some point share the load because it's going to benefit you in the long run. And I think that they've done that. They've had that talk with him, and he kind of understands how this is all made up, because you look at Penn State losing 2 after this year. We've talked endlessly about RB3 for this year, but those guys are going to be competing for next year. You took 2 last year with Tyke Hayes and Jabri Wallace-Coleman. So you're thinking of 5, and then Messiah Mickens makes 6 next year. But we've also seen a lot of running back attrition. There's a lot of guys that transfer out of that spot because it's hard, right? It's hard to go from the big fish to the guy that's not getting the carries. You're looking at 3 guys right now, maybe even 4 with Tyke Hayes vying for RB3 that were, amazing players in high school and record setting all over the place. And then all of a sudden, that's a tough one to swallow, especially when you probably didn't expect Katron and Nick to be back for the 2025 season. So it's just a fascinating roster building exercise here, because it never used to be take 2 all the time, but it's kind of morphed into that. And then Penn State kind of froze with the changeover and having Mickens in 2026 to just one guy. So I think they just get back to that whole method of taking multiple guys and seeing what sticks.
It just feels like the evidence too of how it's worked out on the field with Katron Allen and Nick Singleton both being on the pace to be atop Penn State's career rushing list, having their names on the steps at the student bookstore. Why wouldn't you? Why would that be? Like, there's evidence that it works. The idea of having a co-starter in the backfield. Okay, so let's move on to some of the kind of broader things. We talked about 2026 names to know with Carter Gooden. What about these? Let's get into some of the names that you think are important in 2027. We've talked about we've talked about some of these players here and there on the show, but who are the guys on the list that aren't a part of these kind of subsections that you think we should talk about? Right.
There's 45 of them. I don't know. Where do you want to go? I mean, so let's talk about Elijah Haven, right?
Okay, go ahead. Go there, and then I think that the next thing we should do is talk about quarterback. But start with Elijah Haven.
Elijah Haven is a quarterback. That's why we're going with Elijah Haven.
Thank you.
Right now, ranked 15th in the country, number 1 in the industry rankings. Sean and I had a long discussion about this the other day because it doesn't appear on the surface that Penn State has offered him, which is interesting. At the same time, he's a Louisiana prospect. Obviously, LSU just took Houston, or is it Jordan Houston? I believe, another Louisiana prospect that Penn State was after. So LSU doesn't we'll see. And then everybody else has been picking Elijah to end up at Florida. Well, look what's happening with Billy Napier right now. So Penn State might have an opening here to kind of get in the mix. Because if you look at some of his other visits, like he visited Michigan a ton. Obviously, Michigan already has a commit in Peter Bork. So just kind of when you look around here a little bit, some of the schools that felt like they were certainly in the mix with Haven may not be in the mix as much as it once appeared. So we'll see how things go. Very talented quarterback prospect. I have a interview coming up with Charles Power that I'll get up today on just kind of breaking him down and what's exciting about Elijah Haven. But the fact that Penn State's able to get a potential 5-star. Right now, we have him ranked 99 in the Rivals 300 and 7th at quarterback. But 24/7 ESPN both have him as the number 1 quarterback in the country. So obviously, we'll see where things go. A long way to go till those rankings are finalized. But certainly looks like
ESPN has him as an 88 overall and the number 1 quarterback. That seems odd.
Yeah, it's a different scale.
It's a different. Yeah, it's
okay.
I think
it's interesting. He doesn't. He's not. At least he has not announced it, but he doesn't have an offer from Penn State, which is fascinating when you look at Penn State's quarterback recruiting in 2027. Of course, Keegan Croucher is the name that keeps popping up. He's going to go to Ole Miss this weekend for a visit that's been scheduled for a long time. But James Franklin went up to see Croucher over the weekend, and I think he's maybe the only guy with a check mark beside his name with Penn State that they're going after. There's a bunch of names that are still out there in 2027. There's a bunch of evaluations to be done because, we're a month into those guys' junior years. So you're going to see new names pop up at some point. With going this far without an offer tells me that, he's probably going to tweet it out this weekend. He's probably going to, be on. It's like one of those things that doesn't have to be said to be understood, because you go from Louisiana to Pennsylvania for a visit for a school that hasn't offered you. It's kind of odd. So it's just a very interesting side little mind spinning thing that my brain is doing here, where are you trying to keep Keegan Croucher like, I don't want to say placated, but are you trying to keep him the main focus while not offering this guy, but you're also bringing this other guy in for a visit while he's going to Ole Miss? It's all very fascinating to see how they're trying to balance this. And again, it's too early for this in 2027 while they're still doing evaluations. Ben Musser is going to come up this weekend, the former Virginia Tech commit that we talked about on the show last week. He's a guy that Penn State likes, and he's a guy that Penn State's been watching for a while. So I feel like, because of how we've seen quarterbacks commit in the past and do the domino thing, you feel like you might be a bit behind in 2027, but I feel like they're fine. It's just a matter of bringing in the guy, because you look at where Penn State is at quarterback, and I'm sorry about that.
No, that was me.
That was you? Okay, good.
Yeah.
You look at where Penn State is with quarterback, and there's going to be some transitions after this year. You feel like if Grunkmeyer is the guy, how does that affect the rest of the trickle down? Because Beckham Kritza hasn't really practiced all that much. Troy Huon's going to come in. You need a dude in 2027. They thought Peter Bork would be that guy. He's committed to Michigan now. So it's a big step for Danny O'Brien and Trace McSorley over the next couple of weeks to sort of, figure out where they stand and figure out where the next step is going to be, because you need a stud in 2027.
Penn State needs two quarterbacks either at the end of 2026 or in 2027, I think.
Yeah,
unless they want.
That could be two. That could be another portal guy, or not another portal guy. It'd be the first portal guy. But it's going to be fascinating how that all plays out, especially if you play the percentages here and say Smolik's probably not going to be here after the season too.
Yeah, I think for sure. And Kritza, there's still a lot of questions about. So I think they absolutely need to get. I think they want to get two in 2026 still, honestly. But they're kind of, I think, going to wait for the coaching carousel and see where things go. But when you look at that quarterback room and how different it could look in a year from now, I think that's I want to say a little worrisome, but a little worrisome, because I wouldn't be shocked if it's Gronk and Huon in a year from now, and that's it. If they don't get better.
That is a very.
Smolik.
When's the last time it's been like that, right?
Well, it was like that. What was that? Yeah, what was the Taquan Roberson? Yeah, whatever that Iowa game, that whole situation. I forget what year that was, but they want to avoid that.
About that again.
And look, the portal makes that the portal helps with that, but the problem with the portal is that you're not going to get a lot of guys that they want of their caliber.
You're not going to find a guy that is coming in to be a backup. That can,
and they're going to have to overpay for a backup. Let's call it what it is. And that's not two things Penn State doesn't want to do. They don't want to really have to use the portal for a backup, and they definitely don't want to overpay a portal QB for a backup. So to me, I think getting another quarterback is. Remember this, Sean? Remember we were having this debate, and you. It was just 3-4 months ago, really. And I don't know. I'm fully on your side now. They need another quarterback. No doubt.
So the chat has been talking about two things. And first off, we're not disparaging parts of Pennsylvania. You're going to get put in timeout if you start talking about drugs and stuff in the chat. So sorry about that. Just had to make a ruling on that and calm everything down. Secondly, the chat has been talking about, I think, the thing that everyone wants to talk about here, which is the whiteout. The game is coming up, and we want to talk about the position battles on defense today that are going to determine the game this weekend. So just tail of the tape. Defensive ends, defensive tackles, linebackers, safeties, corners. Which team has the advantage, not on the field versus the opposing offense, but who's got better defensive ends, who's got better defensive tackles. We're going to get into that and give our game breakdown and our score predictions here to end the show. All right, guys. So let's get into, do you want to start top to bottom or bottom to top? Fitz, do you want to go corners? Do you want to go? All right.
Let's not make everything more difficult than it needs to be for us.
All right. So let's start with the corners. This is, I think, a super interesting matchup with a lot of storylines. Fitz, we love storylines. And I hope you meant top as in corners.
No, I meant the rundown where you started with DN and ended with corners. But okay, we can start at the top with corners. That's
Nope, really? You're right. Let's go D-line. Let's start with the defensive tackles. We're going to combine the D-line, defensive tackles, and defensive ends. Defensive ends, Nina Sutton, Zariah Fisher, Chaz Coleman, Jalen Harvey, up against Tatum Toad. Oh, no. Mateo Uungale, Ashton Porter, Blake Purchase. I did not practice those before the show. I apologize. So the defensive end rooms for both teams. Fitz, what do you think here from who has the advantage on paper between these two teams.
Yeah, I'm going to go with Penn State here because number one, I can pronounce all these guys' names, which is very helpful in this situation. But
2OT. There we
yes, no, they're good too. I mean, I think that they're very good. I think that there's probably a little bit more depth. I was watching the Northwestern game yesterday. Number 9, Blake Purchase. I think he's listed as a linebacker, but plays some D end. If I'm Penn State and I see number 9, I'm going right at him. He's not a very physical. He does not show up very physical on tape.
245.
Yeah.
Not as
and
big.
I think that that's an interesting because I was trying to pinpoint him at linebacker, and then I think they kind of move a lot of guys around. They play some different fronts, and they do a lot of I don't want to say catching. And you noticed this last year in the Big Ten title game is kind of they try to occupy as many guys up front so the linebackers can come in and play, and that makes it. It's kind of similar to what Penn State's trying to do right now in their transition to Knowles defense. And I think that these guys are good at what they do, but the bigger plays haven't been there. I think Oregon's got 7 sacks this year. A lot of them are linebacker related and coverage related and things like that. But you got some talented guys there. But I think Denai Dennis-Sutton has a real opportunity to have a great game. Like he is going to line up all over the place. Penn State's going to move him around and sort of try and play with it a little bit, kind of similar to what they've done with Abdul in the past. I know they're very different players, but Denai has an opportunity. This is one that he's had circled for a long time. And, he kind of started his ascent last year at the end of the season against Oregon. So I think that there's a lot going for him this week. Zariah Fisher is going to be a key player, and everyone wants to talk about Chaz Coleman.
Very important.
But Fisher is going to be very key, especially in that sense of mucking up that little 2-yard box where Oregon's going to try and run and then cut back off of that run, which is the one thing that does kind of have me worried with Penn State's defense.
Yeah, and kind of you mentioned the depth. Chaz Coleman has been good. Jim Knowles mentioned last week, we got to see how he does against teams that are good at running the football and are powerful and play big boy football. Oregon does that, and I know we talked about the offensive lines on the last show, but Chaz Coleman in that situation, you feel confident. You should feel confident if you're a Penn State football fan. He's done the X's and O's correctly, but sometimes you just get big boyed by a senior. Jalen Harvey hasn't been as clean, so that depth I think is important there. And I just wanted to follow up on what you mentioned with the Oregon defensive line. They have big-bodied pass rushers. I think Blake Purchase, they wanted to bring him in as more of that speed guy to off the edge to have some versatility there, but versatility is all about what the defensive front does. Ryan, what do you see in the matchup, and then who do you have the advantage towards, Penn State or Oregon in this matchup?
How much time do you think I've spent on watching Oregon this week?
Yeah,
we just got done talking about a 200 recruit list.
Yeah, we put him on the recruiting list, and that's all
right.
He's been in a cage
Fair enough.
In his basement.
Fair enough. I dipped my toe in the water, and it was lava, so that's fair.
I will say, Isaiah World and is it Harkey, their offensive tackles, look to me like they're opposite. Where I think it's World has been pretty good against the pass, and Harkey's been pretty good in the run, or vice versa. Actually,
no, you got that right.
Okay. So my point is but they played nobody. I mean, Oklahoma State's terrible. Oregon State's terrible. I mean, Northwestern
gave them a fight, but that was a team that was clearly outmatched. I mean, they just made them work for it. That's mostly what happened.
So I just be curious to see how those trends hold, right? And do they come back to earth a little bit against some quality defensive ends this weekend? I agree with Sean though. This is a game for Denai. Like this. He's already. I don't want to say a breakout moment, right? I mean,
yes.
That was the Notre Dame game in my eyes. I mean, don't get me wrong, he's had some big games before that, but to me, like this is where Denai, you want to be a first round pick.
This
is your game. This is your game that you got to show it.
Mech Engineer asks, is Denai Dennis-Sutton healthy? He was not participating in practice last week because they had veteran rest days. He was just resting with intensity, as I mentioned. There was some rumor or some concern seeing him not participating. He had his helmet. He's fine, unless there's something I don't know about, which is possible. But he was back. Fitz, he was back. He was back at practice yesterday, right?
Resting with intensity is something Ryan's going to get, I think, starting like Tuesday or so.
Thursday.
Yeah.
Thursday?
Okay.
I'm out next weekend. So
I'm
out for the show next week, by the way. So
oh, good to know. I always like it when we find out information about the show on the show. Defensive tackles.
Read the vacation list, buddy. It's not a vacation, but anyway, move on. Go
ahead. Fitz, defensive tackles. What do you think here between Penn State's athletic guys and then Oregon's massive, giant defensive tackles?
Pretty, I'd say pretty even. I'm very curious to see how Zane Durant does because of the way that Penn State's been using him, and can he be more of an impact guy as a pass rusher, as we've seen in the past, which I think is possible. But there's still the same guys that are out there. Gilliam's played well, Blanding's played well, but those guys haven't. I mean, it's like everyone else, right? We don't know exactly what they're going to go up against in a top 5 offense, top 10 offense, whatever Oregon's going to be. So I still have plenty of questions with defensive tackle. It's about eating those spaces and trying to eliminate those cutback lanes on the backside. I thought Villanova, for what you could take from that game, Villanova stuck to a lot of that misdirection stuff that Oregon's going to try, and they had a little bit of success with it. It's very different judging Oregon backs versus Villanova backs, but that's just going into that. Amari Washington has been a really good player for them. He kind of stuck out to me a few times when watching those games, and Bear Alexander is fascinating just because he's Bear Alexander. If you're not familiar with him as a college football fan, this is a guy who's probably got more people rooting against him than anyone in college football as far as linemen go. Like, he's been all over the map. He visited Penn State as a transfer last offseason, ended up at Oregon. He's been to USC. Georgia's been, he's been all over the place, and he's a very polarizing figure. I've never had a problem with him, but he's a very polarizing figure. He's been productive this year for them, and they will continue to try to replace Derek Harmon and those guys that were there last year. T. Frank has made points throughout the week, at least in our texts and stuff, about Penn State really, really targeted the defensive tackles last year in the Big Ten championship game, and they had a lot of success because of it on the ground. I think they continue to do that. It's going to be a battle inside. I think both the interior, both these D tackles versus the interior, the opposition's offensive line, massive matchup in this game.
Yeah, they have not played to their size for the most part. And Bear Alexander has played exactly to his size, which has been kind of his issue throughout his career. Amari Washington stands out in that case, but Tione Gray has been one of their starters, 50 for Oregon, and he's a little tall. He's 6'6", 336. He's massive. I think as a young player, eventually he's going to be a major problem, but he struggles with losing leverage and then kind of getting washed out of some plays. As you guys have mentioned, they haven't played the strongest competition on the ground, and yet they've given up some runs through the interior. Before the Oregon State game, they were averaging 5.2 yards between the A gaps and the B gaps. Like, that's, for a team that wants to be physical and control the line of scrimmage with 3 players at times, it's not good enough for what they want to do on defense. And I think that's where the question of what are they not doing, Amari Washington playing more, I think, is part of that, and right. Making sure you narrow down your rotation a little bit. And then on the flip side, Zane Durant, you mentioned Penn State trying to control a little bit more. Fitz, what style do you think they play with Durant? Because it hasn't been great when he's tried to control some of those double teams. And this is going to be, even if I don't think Oregon's offensive line is as good as last year, they're Power 5 defensive or offensive linemen. So, how do you think Penn State plays? Because we saw a little bit of them being more mobile and athletic in that last game against Villanova.
Yeah, I think you see more of that, actually. You're trying to move them around a little bit and trying to you can't really predict where the double team is going to go, but you need to keep him away from those because, of all the things that he is, and I think he's great. Yeah, he's a great player. He's not a guy that's going to do what you want Alonzo Ford to do, and that's eat up those double teams. So, yeah, I think they're going to move him around a little bit. I think that there's going to be some creativeness. I'm going to try and go back and look at Ohio State, Oregon from the playoff last year and see what Jim Knowles did there, because they obviously had a lot of success shutting down Oregon in that nature. So I don't know how they're going to use him, man. But you want to see him. It's like one of those things. You see them tell Drew to rip it. You see them tell Nick not to think and just go for it. And kind of thinking that was Zane Durant as well.
All right, so where's the advantage?
Can I add something?
Sure.
Amari Washington got pushed around by Oklahoma State in that run defense, and then Bear Alexander got pushed around by Northwestern as a run defender. So they both played a lot better against Oregon State, but those Northwestern was one of the few games I actually got to watch. And you go back and look, Bear Alexander's, he's 3 yards back. Against a Northwestern offensive lineman. So. And they were playing him at nose tackle.
This is the thing about their scheme is they want to stem from 3 to 4 man fronts. They want to go odd, even. And that's one of the things Penn State did in the championship game is they went tempo and didn't allow them to get into some of those sets. So they had to get a base call. They couldn't do some of those things. And then they just made Jamari Caldwell 330. They made him run, and he was not athletic enough to run. These guys, I think, are more athletic than last year. Harmon aside, the starters this year, I think, can move a little bit better. So I find that interesting in this particular matchup because you're right that they have not been stout up the middle. And then the question to me, like when you're looking at what they do, Bear Alexander, they move him from a 3-tech to a nose, and they want him to move around the formation. But if you just grab him, it doesn't work. You've got Venga Ioane on the interior. What I'm curious about is when you look at Nick Dawkins, 295, different profile than the guys next to him at guard who are both 330 plus. So Fitz, offensive line matchups aside, who has the better defensive tackle room?
Oh, I'll
push.
Go yeah,
Penn State.
I think it's a Penn State, or I think it's Penn State starters, maybe push all together. I mean, it's so tough to project how a guy like how many snaps is Blanding going to get? How much are you going to see the three guys versus that? And honestly, I don't know how close Terrence Green is to being in there, and like their rotations are going to tighten up as well. So like these are big games. This is what all coaches do. So I think that's where it's at.
Let's go a little faster through linebackers, and we'll get to that now here once I find my graphic. There we go. The headliner here, Tony Rojas versus Bryce Betcher. I think that's a fascinating comparison. And then, both teams really just run with three linebackers, Mari Campbell, Dom DeLuca, Bryce Betcher, Devin Jackson, Jerry Mixon. So, Fitz, what have you seen in this matchup? Where do you lean off the bat? Which do you think has the better overall unit?
I think Oregon probably a little bit more solid because I look at Rojas, Campbell, and I guess you can throw DeLuca in there, and still learning that scheme, still learning how to read and react, and that's going to catch him on the backside, I feel. And I think that the things that we've seen from Campbell over the first couple of weeks, yes, there's been really good things in there, but there's also some concerning things where he'll run himself out of the play from here to there. And you can't do that against Oregon, because when you do that, the fast guy that the freshman that took that touchdown against Northwestern was just Oregon's got another one of those guys, right? They've got another one of those guys that can get to the outside and just go, and that's where you leave yourself susceptible. So it's very tough, because I think we look at these matchups and we say, what can the peak of this be? And I think the peak of Rojas and Campbell is probably better, but I think that Oregon has done it on a more consistent basis.
Yeah, and do you think Betcher's an NFL linebacker? Like, do you get that vibe from him?
Yeah, not a top pick type guy, but I think he can play in the NFL. I mean, he's very athletic baseball guy. He's got a lot of things going for him. He's always around the football. You're gonna find a spot for that guy, but it's gonna be 6th round, something like that. I think
he had a really good season last year.
Yeah, he's very good. He's a very good player.
Yeah. He's very frustrating for the passing game too, because I think he moves really well in space, and he's got a good understanding for routes, and Rojas is more athletic, but they present, I think, the same challenge in pass coverage. I want to lean Penn State because I'm going to bet on the upside that we're seeing them progress in this defense, and I think that the defense is going to serve them a little bit better maybe than Oregon's defense, which I don't know. It feels simpler sometimes to me. So let's get to safeties here. We'll talk about maybe the most interesting matchup in terms of position on position. Penn State is very talented at this position. What will they be able to produce on the field? In kind of a similar situation with Oregon, who has dabbled in some 3 safety looks. Aaron Flowers and Dylan Thinman are the starters. Zaki Wheatley, King Mack, who are we expecting? Fitz, what do you see in this matchup? Who is at the advantage here? In a very important, this position is very important to both teams either way.
Yeah, is Wheatley the top guy, and then it's Oregon's probably got the next 3. I would say, that's kind of how I'd look at it. Just
over Thielemann.
What's that?
Wheatley over Thielemann?
It's close. I mean, he probably hasn't been as good as I thought he would be. Like, if that makes any sense for a team that we don't know much about because of the 4 teams that they've played. But I think that's. Like, I think he's close. Like, I mean, like, we're splitting hairs here at the top of the list. But more my point is, there's a bigger fall off for Penn State after their starter, or after their guy, And then that you're looking at King Mack as potential starter. Belgrave Shorter started the season. Dejan Lane. They've all got holes in their games, and I think Oregon probably has fewer. Again, I haven't watched as much of Oregon as I have Penn State, so you're probably shooting more holes in Penn State because you've seen so much of them. That's what we do. But safety is very, very important to both sides. But also, as T. Frank mentioned, they played more 3 safety sets, which kind of takes me back to last year's Penn State defense. And you can put other positions on the field. You're choosing to put 3 safeties out there for a reason. I think
it's
you know what? You're right.
Thank you.
He's playing better right now.
Thanks, buddy.
I'm sorry. I had to look at some numbers there. He is. I mean, Thielman's giving up a lot of passes right now,
and
he's not breaking much up.
He's fairly athletic. I'd say the thing that I notice of him is his downhill run defense is very good. He might be a little bit more explosive than Wheatley, but Wheatley has kind of the blend of run defense. He's big enough, and we all know his ball skills and instincts and coverage, which I think Thieneman is a smart player, but you're right. I haven't necessarily seen the amount of ball production in that area. But they also have been playing a lot of like soft coverages. So I think it's it's another close matchup.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you.
And I think that's what Penn State wants to do as well, is kind of keep that shell and try and get them from going over the top. It's interesting because Oregon's big plays, a lot of people think that big plays are just long throws down the field. A lot of Oregon's big plays come from that kind of finding that kind of space and then creating more space after the catch. So I think that's kind of where guy like King Mack, Belgrave Shorter, those guys are going to be put to the test. Like Dante Moore is going to be finding those guys and going to those guys because you want to, number one, stay away from Wheatley, stay away from those corners. But there are susceptible spots in that defense, and I think that's one of them.
Let's go to corner. This is the area I'll just say I think Penn State has the biggest advantage on the field. A.J. Harris, Davian Collins, Elliott Washington right there. 3 starting caliber corners. Darius Dixon has been very good on the other side. Brandon Finney starting for the Ducks. Penn State's corner in the class of 2024 that almost was. Also, Sione Lelea, another guy, Fitz, that you were very high on from JUCO, who wanted to go to Penn State, ended up at Oregon. Also, Ife Obedengwu, who was a 5-star corner,
Maryland guy,
Offord. Right, lot of Eastern Seaboard flavor over here for the Ducks. Highly talented players, high recruits. Penn State, to me, experience and talent still in the area. But Fitz, what do you think here?
Yeah, I think Penn State's got this one. You've got a couple of young, uber talented guys out there. East Coast guys that are playing. I mean, Brandon Finney, been as high on Brandon Finney as anyone. Did not expect him to start as a freshman in Oregon.
No,
pretty darn impressive for the McDonough product there. But they've got
they had 2 other 5-star corners in that class, and he started over both of them.
Yeah, Naeem Offord's right there as well. I mean, you look at that and you look at the size that he presents. I'm curious for these 2 guys on the outside that we've been watching for a while. Is tackling going to be an issue on the edge? And that's that's. I don't want to say skinny, the skinny nature of them, but the size that they give up and the fact that they're younger players. I mean, it's one of those things there. I don't think there's a ton of good tackling corners, but you got to be adequate at some point, and that's something you usually grow into over the years. So I'm curious to see if Finney is there. He was never a light him up to a corner tackle guy in high school. Ife the same way. So I'm very curious to see how, if Penn State does get to the edge, how that sort of works. And if you can make that guy miss, that could be a really good thing for Penn State. So, but again, there's a ton of talent there. Sion's awesome, by the way. I love that kid when he was at JUCO, not just for his skills, but what a great kid. And he's 6'4" and can turn and run. And it's pretty cool to watch. And like you said, he's going to go to Penn State. The academics stuff did not transfer, and then landed at Oregon, which is a pretty nice safety blanket to fall back on for Lalea. So looking forward to seeing him in person.
So that's our rundown of the defenses. A little bit closer, I think, than on offense, where there's some clear winners and losers. You can go check out yesterday's show to check all of those out. We have 2 more things. I apologize. We're a little bit long on time, but we got some super chats here. I'd like to get to these. Dan Lane asks, do you think the inconsistencies on offense could be attributed to last year's passing focused almost solely on Tyler Warren and Drew learning to spread the ball around more this season? He spread the ball around as a sophomore fairly well. I don't think that's necessarily the issue. He hasn't been targeting one or more players. He hasn't been zeroing in on anybody this year. It's just an aspect of, I think, that the passing offense has been fairly basic to start the year.
Yeah, and you look at
You
the
have any thoughts
target
here?
numbers. Yeah, you look at the target numbers, and I think Pena and Hudson are number one. They each have 20 targets this year, and I think that you're seeing a product of the approach in the first couple of weeks, getting those guys comfortable, and then you're getting Luke Reynolds more involved in the game as well. So I don't think it's been about locking on one guy or anything like that. I've talked about, going through the progressions of maybe a little bit too quickly, and I think that's something they got to slow him down with. And again, I think Todd McShay said it this week. He's got to be better in anticipating. Like that's not new, and that's probably not going to change. But I do think getting the running backs involved is going to go a long way. Nick Singleton 4 for 43 and a touchdown last year in the Big Ten title game. He's got 4 catches and 6 targets this year. So it's the stupid line that we walk. And T. Frank, I saw you comment on this on the board earlier that you don't like to buy into the holding stuff back, but I think the stuff that they've held back is stuff we've seen before. Like you don't expect a new offense. You don't expect them to do all this crazy stuff, but you expect them to run the ball with Drew a little bit more. You expect them to throw the ball to Nick. You've got elements and wrinkles in this offense that, can really make a big difference that you haven't used. So it's like riding that line of, they're holding things back, but it's not like they're going to come out in the oop-de-oop, and
right.
Just be like,
go crazy. Not Statue of Liberty, or they're not going to be running the wishbone. There's not a whole new part of the offense they haven't used. It's more like, what have we seen on tape from previous years that they haven't really used yet? And I put the stat out here. I'll say it again here on the show. Last year, they ran the ball with read option, actual options on the play, 50 times through the first 3 games. This year, they're at half of that. Whether or not they're building the offense around Drew in the running concepts or whether or not they're just not using it, we will find out in this particular game and talk about we will find out. Game predictions here from us to end the show. Ryan, I want to go first to you. Give me your thoughts on the game. We broke down the offense, defense. I know that you've seen some of Oregon. What is your thought about how this game plays out and your score prediction?
Yeah, 27-20. I know, sorry. We always do that, T. Frank. My bad. 27-23 Penn State. I just think last year, Penn State played an Oregon game in the Big Ten championship. You're at home. You have that White Out crowd. I think you need to play a Penn State style of game. You need to sustain drives, which we've seen them do at times against obviously inferior opponents. But we have seen some of that this year. So to me, slow this game down, 3 touchdowns, a couple field goals, and you got to hold Oregon. You got to hold Oregon, in my opinion, under 30. If they get over 30, I think Penn State's in trouble. I think they can do that. I gave 27-23, but you guys have watched a lot more than I have, so I'm not going to – don't put a ton of stock into mine.
Fitz? Well, we kind of arrived in the same spot. Spoiler alert. Fitz, what do you think?
This is tough because it's such an unknowns game. I was talking to Justin Hopkins from Scoop Duck, and I'm like, hey, what do you know about this team? He's like, not exactly sure either. He said it in more words than that, but it's like looking at the non-conference / preseason schedule. Like, what do you like Penn State's offense? I feel confident that the offense is not what you've seen in the first 3 weeks. And I don't mean to inflate expectations there, but just in general in terms of what they like to do in general, they haven't done a lot of it. And that's, I don't want to say breaking a tendency because that's not what it is, but it's like, hey, put this stuff out there, go to run against odd front, go to run losing situations against on fronts, see how it works. And then, we'll just clean up on the back half and clean up in the second half and go with it. I think there's merit to that, but I think that that's not everything, right? Like it's gotta come back to Drew. It's gotta come back to him avoiding those streaks where he has just been killing drives, like you think about it. There's been times, he came out in the scripted play or the scripted drive last week or 2 weeks ago and looked really good and completed, I think, his first 7 of 8 and then goes 1 for 7. You got to avoid those dips. And in a situation like this, in an atmosphere like this, maybe the running backs help those numbers. Maybe, something closer to the line of scrimmage. Maybe Luke Reynolds is the key here. You've got different sort of aspects that bounce around with it. So I've got Penn State winning 30-28, I believe was my prediction. Yes, I got it right. Very much up in the air with that. I think Oregon's a fantastic football team. They've played in really big games before. They've been very successful in those big games. It is a different kind of atmosphere. It's a different kind of scenario for a young quarterback to step in. And by the way, Dante Moore is really good. He's really good. Really good. I'm excited to see him in person, but I'm also excited to see how he handles the atmosphere, how he handles the situation. This is something you can't replicate. They play in a wonderful stadium out there, a really, really loud stadium, but he doesn't deal with that kind of noise on a regular basis. He doesn't deal with that kind of overwhelming atmosphere. So I don't think he plays a bad game, but I think he might, just be a little bit shell-shocked is the wrong word, but a little bit just slow in some of those reads, and maybe that turns into a turnover too.
Yeah. I want to circle back to the conversation about the offensive plays that we haven't seen yet, and kind of this isn't the Penn State offense that we're going to see the rest of the season. That also doesn't mean it's better. It just means it's different. We don't know. And there have been, like, in these situations, playing poorly and making mental mistakes and things that you don't want to see from a veteran team. Whatever the reasons might be for those, they do exist. So we're not, for fans that are like, yeah, but this offense is terrible, like, we're not trying to tell you, we're just trying to tell you what is happening, like the full context of it, not trying to explain it or excuse it. It could still be bad against Oregon. That is absolutely part of the situation. But what Fitz just said there, the unknown of a younger first-time starting quarterback in the White Out, going to the East Coast, all those factors, home field advantage, and what we haven't seen yet from Oregon as well. And the fact that they don't have dominating trench play through the first 3 games, and Penn State has looked much better, even if they haven't looked clean. They have looked dominant at times in the trenches on both sides of the ball. So it's like I said in our article, and you can go read all of our thoughts, including Greg Pickle and Nate Bauer, their predictions. I don't feel comfortable. I got a pit in my stomach doing this. 27-24 Oregon. Penn State. 27-24 Penn State wins. There's a lot of field goals. Like, I just want to say field goals. I know that I picked like 3 touchdowns a team. I'm feeling a lot of field goals in this game because that's kind of me hedging my bets there.
My 30 points is 10 Penn State field goals, so I'm right there with you.
10 drives. How bold.
Yeah.
How would you feel, Penn State fans, if you got 30 field goals in a game and won the game 30-28? The last thing I want to say, and I'll get out of here. This would be Fitz. Ryan. Give me your final thoughts, and then I'll just give you one last food for thought here. I know we're long. I apologize, but I want to get your final thoughts.
Just excited for this weekend, man. Honestly, I've been really kind of like, I feel like the White Out has been so watered down for so long, man. I'm happy for fans because it's been a while. I know Big Noon has crushed a lot of those big games, and as someone who has a lot of friends and family who are going to be up this weekend, I'm just happy for you guys because this is going to be it's going to be a fun one. I know you want like a prediction or something like that. I don't care. It's all about a fun weekend for these guys. We'll be working on recruiting. You guys handle the team stuff, but from a fan's perspective, man, just enjoy this because it's been a while since you've had a game like this.
Fitz, final thoughts?
Yeah, it should be fun. I'm looking forward to it. There was a super chat, by the way, asking about Deny. We'll stash it in the end here. Yeah, I checked in again last night. Deny fine. He was at practice last night. He was working through, and it was pouring rain, and nobody was moving full speed at practice last night. I know there was a tweet out there, but just checked in with that, and everything seemed to be fine. I expect a big game from him. I'm excited to see him sort of step into that spotlight, and he thinks he's the best defensive end in the country. It's time to prove it on a big stage. So I'm excited for Saturday night.
I wanted to get into this conversation with Nate because we've had this conversation about this particular game, and I didn't get to it on Tuesday. So I just want to have this thought because Penn State could lose this game and still make the college football playoff. There is this it's now or never because they're playing at home. Ohio State on the road later. I completely understand the tactical side of even if you lose both those games and you go to the playoff, that is a possibility. The world is not ended. It is not over. I do think it is fair to say that it would be psychologically devastating for Penn State fans to lose in the White Out to Oregon at home in this game with what we've considered and talked about the best coaching staff and the best roster they've had maybe ever under James Franklin. That is a fair thing to say, and that is a fair thing to point out that the stakes are very high for this particular game for Penn State. It's not the end of the world. The realities are the realities when it comes to that. But the emotional temperature of the fan base, the emotional temperature of the narrative of the team, whatever those matter to the conversation about college football. And I bring up Eastern Iowa here. He's a troll, but he's our troll in our chat. says 35-23, Western Ohio State beats Big Game James. And that will be the narrative. Those will be the narratives that are now, set in stone for the most part until something else happens. So I just wanted to say that out loud. I wanted to have that conversation because that is absolutely fair to be very upset if they don't win this game with what should be perceived as advantages across the board when it comes to experience and talent and against another very, very good team. So we'll have more conversation about that on the Penn State Football Tailgate Show coming up at 4:30. Put it on your calendar. Come say hi. It's not going to be raining as far as Ryan and his expert weather prediction has said, so you can come out and see us outside the Bryce Jordan Center ticket office. And, of course, check out BlueWhiteIllustrated.com. There's been so much to talk about. I've done a terrible job of doing this, but there's an awesome deal going on right now. It is $52 for your first year. That is half off to join us. It's the outro to the show. You're going to see this again in a second, but for the people listening on the podcast, half off a subscription right now through the White Out game. You've seen it on social media. You've seen it joining us at BlueWhiteIllustrated.com. Absolutely take the dive because we're going to be breaking everything down from every single angle. Post game, I'll have live analysis and doing all that stuff there in the thread. They'll be giving you what they see pregame and giving you intel and information about recruiting, all that great stuff. So for Ryan and Fitz, who I want to say again, thank you. I kept you 10 minutes longer after class. Appreciate your time here on the show. We'll be back this weekend with Penn State football.